I'm being kind of chill right now about this, I would actually pull my hair out. I truly would. Episode 47 in a month or so, I'd be bald. So there's that.
You're listening to the PuckUps Podcast. It's time to hit the ice with Brian DeFelice.
Welcome into episode 43 of the PuckUps Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, and thank you all for joining me. On today's show, we're going to outline 5 moves that the Boston Bruins should not make this offseason. We'll also preview and predict the Stanley Cup Final between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Vegas Golden Knights. But first things first, if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to the PuckUps on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that you get your podcast. And to get in touch with me or be a part of the show, you can email me at info@thepuckups.com. You can tweet at me on X at BrianDFelice_. You can tweet at the show at the PuckUps, or leave a comment on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere the show has a social media account and post content. Now, throughout much of this offseason, we'll spend a lot of time talking about ways the Boston Bruins can improve their roster for next year and beyond. Moves that they can make, whether it be trades, draft selection, or hell, maybe even free agency. But right now and today, I want to spend some time talking about 5 moves that the Boston Bruins should not make this offseason. And we'll start off right away with number 5, and that is the Boston Bruins should not, I repeat, should not re-sign UFA defenseman Andrew Peeke. Andrew Peeke is a solid third-pair defenseman, but the Boston Bruins have some redundancy there. Henry Jokiharju is already locked into your third-pair right-side defense for a couple of more years at $3 million. Now, unless the Bruins can find a way to trade Henry Jokiharju, then I don't see a way that Andrew Peeke returns. While Peeke and Jokiharju are 2 different styles of play, they're both third-pair right-shot defensemen in terms of their ceiling. Okay, and Andrew Peeke on the open market, he's expected to sign around 4 years at about $4.1 million. It's just too much money for the Bruins to have at one position. $7 million between Peeke and Jokiharju for third pair right shot defense. Now, obviously, one of those guys would be playing up in the lineup in an elevated role that they shouldn't be in. So I'll keep this one stupid simple, and the Boston Bruins should not re-sign Andrew Peeke this offseason. Again, unless they find a way to trade Henry Jokiharju and use the money saved there to allocate it to a Andrew Peeke re-signing. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. Now, Henry Jokiharju had a pretty decent World Championships for Team Finland. They won gold. Is that enough to skyrocket his trade value around the draft? I don't know. I guess that remains to be seen. Next up at number 4, the Boston Bruins should not re-sign UFA forward Victor Arvidsson. Dramatic pause. To a long-term contract. Now, according to AFP Analytics, Arvidsson's next projected contract is for 2 years at $4.9 million AAV. And if that ends up being the deal, then I really don't have much of an issue with the Bruins doing it. For 2 years, Arvidsson had a good year last year for the Bruins. He fits Marco Sturm's system, and he really can be utilized as a Swiss Army knife in Boston's middle 6, top 6. It's not that big of a deal. For 2 years, while young players in the Bruins system can make their way to the NHL roster and be impact players. But I have a hard time seeing Arvidsson taking a 2-year deal for just under $5 million in what could be and when I say could be, most likely is his last big chance at a big payday in the National Hockey League. He's 32, 33 years old. He has an injury history. Okay. He's not getting any younger or any healthier. So Arvidsson, in my opinion, is probably looking for term to have some stability for his family and where they set up shop for the next little while. And 2 years in Boston, if that's what he wants, and I'm the Bruins, then sure, go for it. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a huge cap hit. And it's more importantly, not a huge commitment in terms of years. However, if Arvidsson wants to chase term, which I can't blame him for, got to look out for you and your own, right? But if that's the case, it shouldn't be in Boston where he lands. So if Arvidsson's willing to sign in Boston for 2 years, sure. But the caveat here to why he's on my list at number 4 is if he wants term, it can't be in Boston. I'm sorry. So the Boston Bruins should not sign Victor Arvidsson to a long-term deal. And if that's what he wants, good luck, Vic, and best to you and yours. But it won't be in Boston. At number 3, I have the Boston Bruins not extending upon eligibility any of their 2027 UFAs, and mainly Pavel Zacha. Okay, so I think Zacha leads a 2027 UFA class of Casey Mittelstadt and Sean Corrali, I believe, and Mikey Eyssimont. But Eyssimont, I expect maybe to be traded this summer. So none of the players I mentioned should be extended upon eligibility, which is this July 1. So UFAs in 2027, they're eligible to sign an extension on July 1, 2026. And the Boston Bruins should not do that. And as I said, mainly with Pavel Zacha. And here's why. In my opinion, you're not doing a player dirty by not extending him the second you can, right? You're still honoring his contract. Zacha's under contract for one more season with a cap hit of $4.75 million. And he does everything for the Boston Bruins in the regular season. He plays in every situation. 5-on-5, 5-on-4 on the power play, 4-on-5 in the PK, 4-on-4, 3-on-3, extra attacker situations, both defending a lead and trying to get back into the game. And he's also in your shootout lineup more nights than not. So he does everything for the Bruins. He's a really solid two-way center iceman. There's no denying that. But here's the thing. The Bruins have no reason to jump the gun on extending him. You can make the case that maybe you can lock him in this summer at a cheaper AAV than maybe next year when he can go anywhere he wants to the highest bidder. That's fair. But in terms of player control, the Bruins, the second they sign Zacha to an extension, there's going to be all sorts of no movement clauses, right? And I just think that he's a very valuable piece of the Boston Bruins on-ice product right now, but he's also one of their most valuable trade chips in terms of an NHL roster player that I actually think they would probably move if given the opportunity to. Like, I don't think they're trading David Pastrnak or Charlie McAvoy, right? So I don't find those realistic. But Pavel Zacha, I find that realistic. And in my opinion, let's see where next season goes, okay? If the Bruins have a bad year and you're approaching the trade deadline and you want to trade Pavel Zacha, well, good luck now, because chances are if he extends this summer, like I said, there'll be no move clauses in there, okay? So right now, I think Pavel has a 9-team no trade list, okay? And he has a great cap hit. So if he's not traded this summer, which I'm not saying that they're going to do that, but if he's not, at the very least, he should still be under contract heading into next season, but without an extension in place. Have that flexibility to move him at next year's trade deadline if your season goes to hell and you want to get something for him and you don't think you're going to extend him the following summer. So I just think there's no reason to pigeonhole yourself into contracts before the current ones are up. Once in a while, I understand that you want to lock players in the second you can. And if the Bruins were in a contending window right now and Zacha was a major part of that, then sure. But right now, the Bruins are kind of in a, they're in a bit of a retool, rebuild, call it what you will. And I just think that they need to give themselves flexibility with not only Zacha, but their entire 2027 UFA class. There's no need to re-sign Sean Corrali this summer. I think he's going to walk at the end of his contract anyway, right? But Casey Middlestad, unless it's like a sign and trade situation where you have a handshake agreement in place with another team this summer to sign Middlestad with, limited trade protection and you send him somewhere else, like, okay. But in terms of extending these players for the purpose of being on your team long term, I don't think there's a rush to extend Zacha right now or any of those 2027 UFAs. Honor their contracts, right? Outside of a trade, but honor their contracts. And if you really want to re-sign Zacha, then you're gonna have to do it as a UFA probably. So that's my opinion. The Boston Bruins should not extend Pavel Zacha this summer. In addition, nor should they extend Casey Middlestad, Sean Corrali, or Mikey Eyssimont. Now, speaking of Pavel Zacha, I wanted to bring this up too. I saw a report online, or speculation, whatever, from David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period. And he mentioned that the Winnipeg Jets may be willing to trade their 8th overall pick for top 6 help right now, second line center and or second line left wing. To me, if that's a legit report and Winnipeg is really looking to do that, and I'm the Bruins, Pavel Zacha comes to mind right away. Why? Because Winnipeg, in my opinion, they're in a bit of a pickle right now. Their top players are all in their late prime, aging out of their primes, right? Mark Scheifele's 33. Connor Hellebuck, 33. Kyle Connor, 29. Josh Morrissey, 31, right? Pavel Zacha is 28, 29 years old. And I just think that the Jets, they're not in rebuild mode right now. And I still think they're trying to win with their current core. And I think that there's a bit of pressure in Winnipeg to stay relevant. I know it's a Canadian market, but they have some up and down attendance and interest level on that team. They're kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Canadian hockey market in terms of NHL teams, right? They're a far cry from Montreal and Toronto and Edmonton and Calgary and Vancouver. Hell, even Ottawa, it's the nation's capital, right? So Winnipeg's just kind of stuck right there in southern central Canada and kind of in no man's land. And I think that they struggle for relevancy. And I certainly think that they think their best chance to win is probably still with Scheifele and Connor and Hellebuck and Josh Morrissey. And obviously they had some bad PR letting, Nick Ehlers leave in free agency. He wanted to go to Carolina, where he stated he wanted to go to a quieter market, right? So I just think that, yes, the 8th overall pick would be very valuable. No, if I were them, I would take the pick. But we've seen it with teams. Look no further than the Boston Bruins. When teams have cores that they think they still have a window with, they want to try to add to that. And Winnipeg's core is older than Boston's. Hellebuck's 33. Swayman's 27, 28. Scheifele's 33. Pasternak just turned 30. Kyle Connor's 29. McAvoy's 28. Josh Morrissey's 31. McAvoy's 28, right? Geeky's 27. So Zacha, obviously, right now is part of Boston's kind of, fringe core, and he's in his late 20s. So I just think that if Winnipeg is looking to move on from, the 8th overall pick for some help now, and I'm the Bruins, I would sit there and say, hey, you guys want Zacha and insert B-level prospect here or insert draft pick here. If it takes 23 and Zacha to get 8 overall, you got to do that if you're Boston, don't you? For a guy that you don't even know if he's going to be around long term, right? And by the way, you have your internal succession plans in place for Pavel Zacha. You might not know who your number 1 center is of the future, but you sure as hell know that one of Fraser Minton Dean Letourneau, James Higgins, Matt Pacha, one of those guys can play second line center, right? So if the Bruins can parlay Zacha somehow as a centerpiece or co-piece to Winnipeg, who's trying to win now desperately, right? They're trying to add to their current core, which Zacha does. For all the reasons he's a valuable Bruin, he'd be a valuable Jet, right? And the Bruins can somehow turn that into a top pair defenseman for the next 10 years at eight overall, or a top 3 defenseman, or if a stud forward drops to them at 8, you take best available. I think you got to do that. And that's why I'm saying in the same breath that there's no reason to extend Pavel Zacha right now and add to his trade protection. Okay, let things fall where they may and go from there. That's how I feel about it. At number 2, the Boston Bruins should not, I repeat, should not sign UFA forward Alex Tuch. Let somebody else do that. The Boston Bruins' days of relying on free agency to solve all their problems needs to stop. Free agency, it's part of the sport. I'm not saying not to utilize it, okay? But if you want big impact players, develop them yourselves or trade for younger players. Don't pay top dollar for a 30-year-old winger who Alex Tuch is a good player. He's a good player. But if I'm the Boston Bruins, do not overpay for a 30-year-old winger in Alex Tuch because he will not solve your problems. He might short-term put a Band-Aid on your winger situation, but long-term, that contract is going to age like milk. Why? Because he's already 30. He's projected to get $10 million a year, according to AFP Analytics. The Boston Bruins should not be giving Alex Tuch $10 million a year for what is projected to be a 7-year deal. You want to pay Alex Tuch till he's 37? Sorry, you're not there right now. You shouldn't be that team. You just shouldn't be. So the Boston Bruins should not sign Alex Tuch. That's where I stand on that. And then at number 1, the Boston Bruins should not trade for Vincent Trocheck. I've seen whispers out there that the Boston Bruins were interested in Vinny Trocheck at the deadline, possibly remain interested in Vinny Trocheck right now. It was Hockey 24/7 on Twitter. I saw this from, I think they have like 11,000 followers, so they're somewhat legit. And then Arthur Staple, who works at Daily Faceoff, was on a podcast. It was called the Rangers Recon Podcast. And he was having commentary about if the Bruins would trade Mason Lohrei for Vinny Trocheck. Oh, listen, I like Vinny Trocheck. I really do. But Trocheck is 32 years old. He's got 3 years left on his deal at a cap hit of $5.62 million AAV. Honestly, not that bad. Not that bad when you consider the salary cap is going to continue to rise dramatically over the next couple of years. He had 53 points in 67 games last year, okay? I'm not trying to discount the type of player Vinny Trocheck is. But ultimately, and unless the Bruins end up trading Pavel Zacha for the 8th overall pick, to our conversation earlier, Zacha plus for the 8th overall pick, and now you have a hole for a couple of years in terms of a veteran, true top 6 center, and you want to fill that vacancy with Trocheck, that's a different situation. I'm still not doing that. But in the situation where all the current Bruins are still on the roster, present and accounted for, in what world does adding Vinny Trocheck to this Boston Bruins roster not seem redundant? This Bruins roster is littered with 2Cs and 2C potential players, right? Elias Lindholm, I mean, what's he now? A 3 right wing? Like, that's what I think he should be next year is a middle bottom 6 winger. Okay, but Pavel Zacha, really good 2C, right? Fraser Minton, maybe he's a 2C ceiling. Maybe Minton's a 1C ceiling and he'll surprise us all. But I think the conservative guess on Minton is that he's a 2C ceiling. James Higgins, you hope he's a 1C ceiling. Maybe he's a 2C floor, and that's where he ends up, right? Like the jury's kind of out there. What's Dean Letourneau in time, right? So what are you going to do? Add Vinny Trocheck to Elias Lindholm and Pavel Zacha and just log jam again the middle of the ice with okay veterans that are just taking away time and space and development for some of your younger players and your true future? It just makes no sense to me as currently constituted. The way the Bruins roster currently stands, I just don't see why Trocheck makes sense. In fact, I'm being kind of chill right now about this. I would actually pull my hair out. I truly would. Episode 47 in a month or so, I'd be bald. So there's that. One other comment I wanted to make on the Alex Tuch thing too is the reason why you shouldn't be so dependent on free agency is because in order to win the player in free agency, you got to be the highest bidder. And not just in terms of term and AAV, but also in terms of player protection, trade protection, right? All these players, they all want full no moves, full no trades. And I'm sorry, but I'm not giving Alex Tuch top dollar. I'm not giving him $10 million a year for 7 years with full trade protection. It's not happening. So I know he's the sexy, higher end forward UFA this summer. If I'm the Boston Bruins, don't even sniff around him. Let him go somewhere else. You're not in position right now to hamstring yourself financially or in terms of term and trade protection for a 30-year-old winger who, let's be honest, he's a good player. He's a good player. He's not a franchise changer. Okay. The Bruins can improve in other ways. They need to stop relying on free agency. And then, yes, just finishing off with the Vinny Trocheck deal. If there's true, smoke with that fire, then I've lost all hope, truly. And again, I don't dislike Vinny Trocheck as a player, but it's all about fit and timing. And neither one of those makes sense for the Boston Bruins at this point in Trocheck's career or the Bruins organizational trajectory. Again, if you were to trade Pavel Zacha, right? If you were to trade Zacha this summer and, you're trying to fill that hole, fill that void that Zacha brought to your team while your younger players are still trying to get their comeuppance, then that's one thing. I still would rather them not, but at least I would see what they were doing there. Because again, Trocheck's not on a crazy contract. He's got 3 years left on his deal. Brings him to 35 years old at a 5.5 cap hit. That's not that bad. That's not that bad for what he brings and will continue to bring for a couple of years. But it doesn't make sense right now. And to be honest, I think Trocheck's going to Minnesota. I think Billy Guerin and the Wild wanted him last deadline and it just didn't work out. In fact, Trocheck and the Rangers were talking like he was already being traded at last deadline and he wasn't going to be around post deadline, and somehow he stayed. I guess teams weren't willing to pay the price that the Rangers were asking for. And that's the other part of this shoe to drop is what would the price be for Vinny Trocheck, who's a decent 2C. So those are the 5 moves, in my opinion, that the Boston Bruins should not make this offseason. Let's move along now to the Stanley Cup Final preview and prediction portion of our show. The Carolina Hurricanes versus the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, both of these teams have been spectacular in the postseason. Vegas is 12-4. Carolina, hold my beer, 12-1. I mean, I know that there's been some conversation about the opponents of each team and their path to get to the finals. I'm sorry, but Carolina, Ottawa in round 1 was not the cakewalk that people make it seem. Ottawa was a very good analytics team, and they have a lot of good players and some sandpaper and some skill, and a lot of close games in that series could have gone either way at times. So that was a legit first round sweep by Carolina. I'm sorry. I know some people like to hate on Ottawa because they're a bit of a sideshow at times and they have their own issues off the ice, but you can't take that away from Carolina. Just cannot. And they deserve that series. And round 2 against Philly. Okay, yeah, I don't think many people had Philly in the playoffs at the start of that this past season, let alone in round 2, and in pretty dominant fashion over the Penguins. But again, when you catch fire at the right time, you're always a dangerous out. Okay, so Philly deserved to be where they were as well. And in round 3, Carolina, they took advantage. I mean, I called it, and I think most people probably recognize what was going to happen between Carolina and Montreal. Carolina had about 2 weeks off because they had back-to-back sweeps in rounds 1 and 2. Meanwhile, Montreal had the exact opposite. They had a 7-game series against Tampa Bay in round 1 and a 7-game series against Buffalo in round 2. And both series, they won game 7 on the road and found their way to the Eastern Conference Finals, but it was a taxing road to get there. So it was pretty clear that in game 1, the advantage went to Montreal because they were still feeling the swag of a game 7 win against Buffalo, and they played a lot of hockey. They played 14 games prior to round 3 against Carolina. Carolina played 8. And it was the classic, rest versus rust for Carolina in game 1, and Montreal was still feeling pretty good about their game, and they blitzed Carolina in game 1. But heading into that series, you just felt like as the series went on that the wear and tear of 2 7-game series for Montreal was going to catch up to them, and the rest that Carolina had was going to be advantageous for them, and that's exactly what happened. They skated Montreal out of the building in games 2 through 5 and really coasted their way to a Stanley Cup Final appearance where they'll play the Vegas Golden Knights. In Vegas, again, they had their own interesting path, and similar to Carolina playing Ottawa in round 1, Utah was not a very easy opponent for Vegas in round 1. I mean, I know that the Mammoth have a lot of proving to do. They're a young team. It was kind of their first real go at it as a group. Vegas has a ton of experience, but there's a lot of skill with the Utah Mammoth between Clayton Keller and Dylan Gunther and Logan Cooley, just to name a couple of forwards up front. But that roster is littered with talent. So I think the future is very bright for Utah. And, they fought Vegas hard in round 1. Okay, but Vegas, they have the experience. They have the guys that have been there, done that. And on the heels of a coaching change where Bruce Cassidy was fired and John Tortorella was brought in, seemed to galvanize the locker room. I think Bruce Cassidy is a hell of a coach, and it's a shame that the players kind of seem to give up on him, but it is what it is. Vegas makes bold moves, and they bring in Tortorella, who's cut from the same cloth as Cassidy, but either way. Then they move on to play the Ducks in round 2. Now the Ducks had taken care of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and the Edmonton Oilers in round 1. The up-and-coming Ducks with a lot of skill and speed on that team too, right? Led by Leo Carlson up front and Troy Terry and Cutter Gauthier, Beckett Seneca. Like, there's a lot of talent on that Anaheim team, and I think they were maybe a little bit ahead of schedule from what some people may have expected heading into the year. But again, Vegas took care of them, and then they go on to play the Colorado Avalanche, which you have no Cale Makar in games 1 and 2, and then he comes back for game 3 where Vegas is already up 2-0, and then Nathan McKinnon gets hurt, and he's hurt in games 3 and 4. Now, everybody plays hurt this time of year, not trying to take things away from Vegas, but they kind of caught Colorado at a really good time. But nonetheless, Vegas was a very, very good analytical team in the regular season, and they had some goaltending issues for much of it. Obviously, Carter Hart comes into the fold and plays really well for them, but Vegas has been a strong team all year, and I'll get to the numbers in the regular season between both them and Carolina, and these two teams are a hell of a lot closer than many may realize, okay? In the regular season, Carolina finished second in the NHL with 113 points, Vegas 13th with 95 points. Okay, so that's pretty significant But here are the under the hood numbers between the Hurricanes and the Golden Knights. And I just think that these teams are very close. And I think it's going to be a hell of a series. I really do. Goal differential in the regular season, Carolina, third in the NHL, plus 56. Vegas, 13th, plus 15. Power play, Carolina, fourth in the league, 24.9%. Vegas, sixth in the NHL, 24.6%. Nearly identical. On the PK, Vegas was ranked seventh with an 81.4% kill rate, and Carolina was ranked 11th at an 80.5% kill rate. So the slight edge goes to Vegas there. But these teams are very close, and you'll notice a trend. Very close. Expected goal differential. So for goal differential, Carolina was third and Vegas was 13th. Expected goal differential, Carolina second, Vegas fourth. Okay. So again, that speaks to Vegas's goaltending, right? In a lot of ways, pre-Carter Hart. Penalty minutes taken per 60. Vegas, sixth. Carolina, seventh. So penalty minutes taken per 60. Vegas, sixth in the NHL with 7.46 penalty minutes per game. And Carolina was 7.53. Penalty minutes drawn, okay? Vegas, 19th in the NHL, 8.13 penalty minutes drawn per game. Carolina, 26th, 7.56 penalty minutes drawn per game. So both teams are coming out with more time on the power play than on the penalty kill per 60 throughout the regular season. Okay, so that speaks to both teams being disciplined while also having their fair share of power plays. Shots on goal for Carolina, second in the NHL. Vegas, seventh. Shots on goal against Carolina, 32nd. Vegas, 30th. So Carolina gave up the least amount of shots in the entire NHL. And Vegas was not far behind them. They gave up the third least, okay? High danger shots on goal for Carolina, first, Vegas, 12th. So Carolina, not only do they have a lot of volume of shots, right, where they were second in the NHL in shots for, but they also provided the most, or they generated the most high danger shots. So they weren't just shots from distance. They got to the net. High danger shots on goal against Vegas, 5th, Carolina, 8th. So both of these teams, they're disciplined, they generate, they're stingy, right? Neither team gives up a lot of chances, and both teams generate a lot. So these two teams are very, very close. For me, I think this series is going 7 games. I have a feeling it's going 7. I think it's going to be a tremendous brand of hockey. Both teams play really structured, really disciplined. They impose their will on oppositions when they're on top of their game. But it's a contrasting style because I don't think either team has played an opponent quite like the other so far in these playoffs. And, you know, Vegas has not played a team that is as relentless as Carolina. They don't stop moving. They just don't. They're a well-oiled machine. They have been for quite some time under Rod Brindamore. They played a style of hockey that doesn't matter who's on the roster or who's in the lineup. Carolina plays the same way. And it's never gotten up to the finals until now. They've always fallen short, a couple of conference finals appearances along the way. But Carolina has always been greater than the sum of their parts. And I just think that Vegas it's going to be an adjustment for them. The way that Carolina checks without the puck, the way that they forecheck, the way that they're relentless in all 3 zones. You know, they obviously play a bit of a man-on-man in the D zone, which is tough to play against, and they've mastered it. But I just think Carolina, they don't stop playing hard, and they throw a lot at the net, and they cause chaos. And so can Vegas, no pun intended, but can they weather that storm? And I think home ice will play a factor here too. So, you know, you've played 13 playoff games. If you're Carolina, you've lost one of them. It's tough to see them losing the series. However, I would argue that Carolina has not played a roster so far in these playoffs that has the high-end skill and proven leadership and winning pedigree that Vegas has, right? Like, they haven't played a number one center like Jack Eichel. Okay, Mitch Marner is a hell of a winger to add to this team, right? And while he's unproven in the postseason prior to this year, or not unproven, but a bit of a bad rap in the postseason prior to this year, which he's been spectacular for Vegas outside of Toronto. But Mitch has not had a ton of postseason success prior to this season, but he's had some big moments for international hockey with Team Canada at Four Nations and at the Olympics. And, he can be a big game player. He's proven that this spring and with Team Canada at times. And he's had some moments for Toronto too along the way, but that team obviously just never got the job done. Mark Stone, proven winner. William Karlsson, proven winner. Shea Theodore, proven winner. Okay, like there's a lot of talent, but a lot of leadership and a lot of proven talent in Vegas. Whereas Carolina, yes, you have Andrei Svechnikov and you have Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis and Logan Stankoven and Taylor Hall and Nikolai Ehlers and Jacob Slavin. You have Keandre Miller and Shane Gostisbehere. You have Alex Nikishin. Like, you have a lot of players. Jordan Staal. Jordan Staal is a proven winner. He won a cup with Pittsburgh way back in the day in 2009. But basically what I'm saying is Carolina has a lot of guys that they haven't won the big one. And Vegas, they have. A lot of those guys on Vegas, they've hoisted the Stanley Cup. So Ivan Barbashev, two-time Cup winner, one with St. Louis, one with Vegas, right? Pavel Dorofeyev, he obviously hasn't won a cup with Vegas, but he's a hell of a player too. So I have a hard time envisioning in one breath Carolina losing 4 playoff games, having only lost 1 to this point. But at the same time, I have a hard time seeing this going 7 games and Vegas not being the team to pull it off. I want to say Carolina wins in 7, but until they can show that they can be the champs, I'm going to go with a team that has recently been the champs, and I'm going to go Vegas. I just feel like in a Game 7 situation, because I do think this is going 7 games. I do. I just can't help but feel like in a Game 7 situation, I have more trust in Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, William Karlsson, Shea Theodore, Ivan Barbashev. I have more faith in those guys finding a way to get the goal that matters most, right? Hell, maybe even Tomas Hertl or Mitch Marner. Maybe it's Mitch Marner. Maybe Mitch Marner caps off the Cinderella spring for him. It's been a crazy calendar year, leaving Toronto and going to Vegas in the offseason and, getting a new lease on life in Vegas. And, if Vegas wins the cup and Marner continues to be a decent producer in the finals, I think the Conn Smythe is going to him. So I just feel like I have more faith in that cast in a Game 7 scenario, even on the road, than I do Sebastian Aho or Andrei Svechnikov or Nikolai Ehlers or Logan Stankoven, right? Seth Jarvis, to me, he's a gamer. Stankoven's a gamer. They're all these players in both these teams, they're all gamers. But who do I see getting the game-winning goal in a Game 7 situation? I just feel like I can see 3 or 4 or 5 players on Vegas doing that before I can see anybody on Carolina doing it, right? And maybe I'll be proven wrong. I think it's going to be a hell of a series. I think both teams deserve to be where they are, and I can't wait to see the outcome. But if I had to choose a winner right now, and I might regret saying this, and I might be wrong, I might be wrong, I just feel like it's going to be Vegas in 7. When I can't choose because both teams are, again, I read off all the numbers. Both teams are very close analytically. They were all year long, and they've both been plowing through oppositions in the playoffs. Okay. I tend to default to the team that has the best players in the series, and that's Vegas to me. So that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening, and I'll talk to you on Friday.